Hello and welcome to Stephen University. This week we'll be discussing Little Graduation. I forgot which one for a second I forgot which one we were doing first. Little Graduation. Do them in order.
For some reason these two have merged more in my head than usual. But yeah.
I don't know if there's a for some reason for that. I think these two are literally like I think it almost feels like one of them should have ended with "to be continued." Like they are very much. They feel like a two-parter.
Thematically, they deal with very similar stuff, and character-wise, obviously, there's a direct plot point as well. At the end of this episode, he makes a decision which carries on into the next.
Yes,
but yeah, certainly thematically and character arc-wise, it very much feels like a part one and a part two.
Well, yeah. So if it thematically follows on and a plot point follows on, you can sort of see them being arguably more linked than the show usually is.
Yeah, definitely.
Historically, even if we just talk about future, the themes and plot of one episode don't necessarily carry straight into the next. They may reoccur in a later episode, but they've not all been about the exact same things. Whereas this one literally is 2 episodes about the same thing, and a big plot thread carries over from one to the other. So it is interesting they chose to do that. I think it works well, and I'm glad that they got to air together. I think they're a good little combination. Obviously, at this point, worth noting, there's no more debate about is there more. I mean, there wasn't really much debate after that advert dropped that said there was some more of this show in 2020. But I think we can absolutely say with clarity now that I mean, there's no way Prickly Pear it's based on its ending. So there is still I still think that at most this is going to be 20 odd episodes. It can't be any more just on timing. There's just they weren't in production for long enough to have made more than that. So anyway, let's get into this one. So very brief synopsis. It's the graduation of the
why would you who would the synopsis be for, Dan?
What's that, sorry?
Would it be for people listening, a bit further away from the episode, maybe?
Yeah, it'd be people who listen to this podcast in the future.
Here we are in the future.
I forgot.
Also,
I forgot to set you up for
Happy
that.
New Year! Happy New Year, by the way, people.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year! Yeah, it is a new year. Congrats on making it.
For the slight break, timing as previously explained, but here we are in the future. Here we are in the future. And it's SU.
Here we are in the future, and World War III is on our doorstep.
There's some stuff going on in the world.
2020. Who knew? And all those people were talking about 2012 being the end of the world. They really missed 2020, didn't they?
Here we are in the future.
Here we are in the future, and it's doom.
Anyway.
People
don't come here for that, Dan. They don't come here for your tired political commentary.
It's fair. I'm a beaten man, Chris. Politically speaking. Let's get into this one though. So to do our little synopsis for those listening in the future. Pause.
Here we are in the future.
There we go. This episode's a little graduation. I found this a really, really fun choice. Basically, what never occurred to Chris and I when we spoke about this episode's title and seeing the original off colors and no one else was that different classes will graduate at different times, and the fact this is the first class graduating suggests that the off colors were his first students, which makes perfect sense. Like, actually makes perfect sense. And why that never occurred to us in our discussion of this episode, I do not know. I mean, it's a shame they don't get a single line between them, but that's a different issue. Yeah, so the off-colors are graduating, and everyone's coming to see them. And we reveal that Lars basically was only staying on Earth and doing his pastry shop until they graduated. And then he's off back out into space with them because that's where his passion lies. And Sadie has found a new partner in Shep. A non-binary person who is voiced actually by a non-binary person. We'll come back to that later. It's pretty cool. And Stephen has a bigger issue with this than anyone. And during the
not the fact that Shep's non-binary, the fact that Sadie's got a new partner.
Yes, sorry, apologies if I put those two sentences too close together and made it sound like Stephen was some sort of bigot. Sorry, that was not unintentional.
He's not J.K. Rowling, Dan.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh no.
Here we are in the future.
All she had to do to be beloved by millions forever was shut up and do nothing forever. That's all she had to do. She was so close, Chris.
For those, the big thing for me, and Council of Geeks did an excellent video on the subject. The big thing for me is for anyone going, well, she's not explicitly said that. She's not da-da-da. She's not da-da-da. There's been a few incidences of this, and she has given her political opinion about Trump, Brexit, Labour, Conservatives. She is not afraid to state her stance. All she has to do is go, can I just clarify, I support transgender people, and I think I believe in transgender people. And she's not done that. And she's done it for lots of other things. I'm sorry. Council of Geeks. J.K. Rowling is transphobic. Here's why. I think is what the video called. Watch it.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're right. There have been a few incidents over the years where she's like retweeted people with those sort of views, and people have ummed and ahed. But I mean, this was very, I think this is there's no defending this. Like there's literally no defending this. She's made it very clear how she feels. It's a shame. It's really a shame. Yeah. Don't meet your heroes, Chris. Anyway.
Sorry, it was too easy a comment when you were like, he's not a, I was like, oh.
Yeah, it was a complete accident. Just the two sentences got put too close together.
I know, of course.
So Stephen is unfortunately is upset by everyone moving on. He doesn't like that Sadie is with someone that isn't Lars, and he doesn't like that Lars is leaving the planet with the off colors. It's all very upsetting for Stephen, and seemingly everyone else is pretty happy with the idea of sort of moving forward. The Sadie killer and the suspects have broken up, it turns out, and that Sadie is now doing music with Shep. It's all a bit much for Stephen, and during the homeschool graduation ceremony, he sort of goes pink again, loses control, and he basically creates a diamond version of his bubble. It's much larger, but it's got loads of diamond shapes baked into it, and it's equally as impenetrable. And no one can get out, and it's like his emotions getting the better of him again, and trying to keep his friends from leaving. I mean, he's literally starting to suffocate them. The bubble starts to, as he feels a bit claustrophobic, and they all discuss their feelings. We reveal that Lars and Sadie did have conversations, but off screen, and out of Stephen's earshot as well, about their future, and decided not to pursue it. Sort of a little bit of meta commentary there. We'll come back to that, I'm sure. In the end, Stephen sort of apologizes for what's going on when he realizes that it's kind of him. I'm trying to remember exactly what makes him. I think there's maybe slight criticism, because I love this episode. It's one of my absolute favorites of the show so far. But thinking about it, I can't actually think what in the end makes the bubble go away. And I literally just watched this 10 minutes ago.
Shep, he's very quick. Shep basically speaks to Stephen and says, what you've just said about the emotional stuff. And then Stephen, it's really weird because the whole thing, we will need to talk about this in more detail, but to answer your question, the whole thing has been all about, like, as you and Shep said, about his feelings and not wanting to let people go. And then I think it's, Kiki, is it?
Because Stephen says, I don't see the connection. It's like played out as a joke.
Yeah, but then he kind of does, and then he says, I miss you guys. And Sadie and I think it's Kiki are like, Stephen, just because we're not going to be around doesn't mean we're not going to be friends. We'll miss you too. And then the bubble goes away, and it's kind of, see if you can get the transcript up, but I found that moment jarring because the whole thing for me was about him letting go. And they just acknowledge that they're also going to miss him, and it's okay to miss each other. And then the bubble goes, which in some ways is about letting go. But it was another one of those, with 2 more minutes, you could have maybe made that moment a bit more.
Yeah, I'm looking at I've pulled up the transcript. Stephen, you're great, but you need to let us live our own lives. If you don't give people room to grow, you'll suffocate them. In this case, literally. And Stephen's
but then that's a bit before the bubble actually goes away.
Yeah, no, only a couple of lines though. That's what's kind of amazing. Stephen says, I know, I don't want to hold any of you back. I can't help it if my dumb heart misses you guys. To which Ginny says, Stephen, we'll still be your friends, even if we're light years away. And he just says, you guys, and the bubble dissipates. That's it. It is very little. It does vanish under very little. That's interesting, but we'll come back to that, I guess. So, episode as a whole, though, how are we feeling? Where are we at?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. One of my favourites, right up there with the Pearl episode, in my opinion. There were some bits where you kind of wish the show's 15 minutes long, like that bit. The bubble actually appears quite late in the episode. Shep, the character Shep, loved. Just brilliant. I thought Lars and Sadie's maturity was great, and so like how fucking real is this show? Like how like just the way Lars was, like, he wasn't ecstatic, he wasn't jumping up and down for joy, but he was genuinely happy for Sadie, comfortable with it, kind of making an effort comfortable. You felt maybe a bit of him was sad about it, but he wasn't going to show that. He was just like, yeah, cool, great. That was so real. That's like some of the most
could have become
honest...
like an exaggerated, like he's upset, like actually grumpy about it, and that would have felt more cartoon and maybe more fitting with this style of show. But the show has obviously matured to a point where they can get away with doing it this way, which is much better.
Yeah, so mature. Like just one of the most honest reflections of how people actually, are in those kind of scenarios. I thought they did that. That was potentially my favorite element of that whole thing. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I say, I think the bubble thing was a bit rushed. But other than that, I think it was really, really strong.
Yeah, I think I don't mind that the bubble appears late in the episode, because I think every minute prior to the bubble appearing is fair. Kind of setting up the bubble appearing, because you're thoroughly establishing why Stephen feels like he feels. And I think so that, in fact, actually, you could argue the problem is that they spent too much time setting it up, so they don't have enough time left to explore why it goes away. So you could almost argue maybe a minute less spent, at the other end of the bubble, the setting it up, because you pretty clearly you can see how it happens. So it's maybe you deduct a little from that just to give a little bit more on the other end. But yeah, it's a wonderful episode. I mean, the thing that struck me most about this episode was how powerfully they made us share Stephen's pain. I think it's clever because it's so upsetting to see what we thought were happy endings for characters changing. So Sadie was with the suspects, Lars had his pastry shop, but in reality, like, Lars wanted to go back out into space, which we did discuss as an option. We were sort of like, oh, isn't it a shame he isn't a space pirate anymore? So we talked about that. So it's almost like it's both satisfying. I'm happy for Lars, but at the same time, there's like a loss of the pastry shop, and you're like, oh, but that was also a nice ending for him. And then with the suspects, like, you go, oh, that kind of hurts. Like, I liked that Sadie went off and did music, but then you're like, well, no, she's still doing music, and actually, this whole I'm looking forward thing, yeah, her old music was all anger and looking back on how miserable her life was when she was at the donut shop. Like, the idea that she's got this new sound and it's a happy, pleasant sound, and she's looking forward, and it's the music's looking forward too, and it suits. And what's really clever as well is a few people have commented in the past that, like, it's weird that I like so much of the Sadie Killer and the Suspects music because it doesn't really suit Katie Micucci's voice. To do that really aggressive, like, raspy, like, sort of like that style that needs a bit more oomph to it. She's a very soft singer. She's a very, and yet here it's like it's kind of, whether intentional or not, this style of music suits Kate Micucci's voice much better. So it's like, oh, this is like, thematically you could argue that, and this is again, this could be coincidence. So nobody at me on this one, don't at me. But the idea to me, like, oh, it not only is this music like her looking forward, but it actually suits her better, both thematically but also like vocally. Like, it suits what Kate Micucci can do with her voice. It sounds so much nicer and more suited to her than what she was doing with the Suspects. As much as I love all the Sadie Killer and the Suspects songs. I just think that's brilliant. So, like, for me, what struck me most was that I totally felt it with Stephen, because I was sad at the loss of Sadie Killer and the suspects, and I was sad at the idea that the pastry shop was just a stopgap for him while he waited for the off colours to graduate, which probably took a couple of years, which is why, because for a minute I went, wait, you were waiting to leave? Opened a you start a business just in the meantime as a thing to do, like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And I was like, actually no, it's probably been it's almost definitely been years since he opened the school at this point. So it makes sense, makes perfect sense. So yeah, there was a lot to love about this episode, but that really, particularly that idea, struck me very strongly.
Yeah, I think it was just played very earnestly, and I think the acting all round, from Zach to the people playing the off colours and Lars, etc., was just superb in this episode. Like, just really, really strong, and I think you absolutely feel his pain because of those performances, and because of, I hate to just hark on about the same point, but because of how real it feels, because it makes you associate with it more. It makes you remember when you've done that, or when you've had someone do that to you. It brings up feelings of graduation and stuff, but from a different angle, rather than playing the people graduating know what they want to do. It's the Steven stuff that is just kind of teased and explored, and then that's why it goes so well with Prickly Pear, because Prickly Pear is him voicing that, why do I need people to need me? That's sort of the conclusion from this episode. So yeah, I thought it was fantastic. What did you think of Shep then? I just thought, what a wonderful, and I think especially because, like, although it sounds stupid, like, genuinely that J.K. Rowling stuff kind of blew up and was on my mind. It'd been discussed. I brought it up at a family thing, not my family thing. It was Jess's family thing, and obviously there are multiple generations of people with multiple different views that comes when you have a family of 4 generations sat in a room. And I brought it up and explained what had happened. Jess's sister is going, "This is a can of worms. Why are you doing this? This is a can of worms." And I'm like, hey. My own amusement. Let's see what people think. I'm going to give my view. So like that kind of discussion had just happened. So like that whole thing, and obviously I'm before anyone yells at me, I'm very aware that we're dealing with different subjects here. I'm very aware that Shep is not transgender, but that
it is still issues of gender though, and if somebody if somebody doesn't consider a trans person to be of a different gender, then they're probably, and I'm not speaking for J.K. Rowling specifically here because she hasn't made any comment on this,
or anyone from Jess's family, I might say as well.
But my assumption would be if you were the sort of person that does not feel a trans person is the gender they have that they feel they are, if you're just going purely on biology, I guess, which is a really sort of a very limited way to look at the world, but hey, whatever. I would imagine that somebody who's non-binary you'd have the same issue with them, presumably.
Yeah, that's fair. And also I think it's because like the Maya thing and that whole thing had made transgender a discussion, and whilst it should be a discussion to educate people who perhaps are from a different generation, etc., because I think it's important to remember that, like, the world has changed a lot in 50 years, and like just look at the television 10. Exactly, and just look at the television and that's a great point. And I think the reason I loved this so much is because in order to actually move forward, we should, in our media and in our treatment of people, we should not be it should be a discussion if someone argues, or if someone says something horrible, or if someone does what that woman who got fired does. That's when it should be a discussion to try and educate. The media portrayal of transgender people unless the story they're telling revolves around that. In order to actually move forward, the media portrayal should start being, this is just these people. These people. God, that sounds awful. He, she, however they want to be referred to,
They
are
in this
just
case.
they. Sorry, they are. I'm trying. And this is the thing. It's a learning curve for everyone. But the reason it's the way it stops being a learning curve is if you have stuff like this where they used her partner as a character that was just her partner, and it was just not defined. I don't mean I mean the gender. I don't mean they.
It's the same way they did it with Connie Stevoni. Sorry, it was just
yes, exactly.
The world of Steven Universe just has no problem with the non-binary thing, to the point where it's not even a discussion point.
Exactly, and that's what's so powerful.
You're a they, and it's when Stephen and Connie first fused, without ever pronouncing themselves as I'm they them, everyone just used that, and I think that's really cool.
Exactly,
and
that's the point I'm making.
Do it without referencing it, right? Like that's what you're getting at. Is like, don't make it necessarily a plot point.
Bumbling idiots like me, not stepping on toes, but by the way, stepping on toes and being nervous about the right terminology for the right reasons, because they don't want to get it wrong. What helps that is just witnessing it done the right way, without it being a plot point of, well, it's partner, not boyfriend or girlfriend. It just being partner, in terms of the words that are used. That's really effective, and it means that the young people watching this will adapt to that a bit more. Although it sounds crazy, it's in 50, 60 years ago, unfortunately, the reality is that if you were to see a black person on screen, potentially as, say, a neighbour, that would be the plot of the show in the 60s or 70s. Like, there are literally shows in Britain about white people living next door to black people and the impact that has. That doesn't help the conversation and doesn't help society move on, because it creates a discussion that is inherently argumentative, or a discussion. When you moved to the point, later on, thank God, in the 80s, 90s, whatever, where if a neighbour in a show was black and that wasn't mentioned, that wasn't a plot point. It helps everyone,
I think for younger people, for sure, because I think I hate to use the word normalizing, because it's, but I think
it shouldn't need to be normalized.
But it shouldn't need to be normalized. But we live in a society that, as you said, is argumentative by nature, it seems. So I think for young people, it's important to bring them up in a way that goes, this isn't even discussion worthy. Like, when you get older,
and that's what this was doing.
The problem we have is there are still a lot of people on the planet that do need to have that discussion. So I think with kids TV, this is absolutely the way to be handling it. And I definitely think there's a certain amount of that needs to happen in TV aimed at adults too. But I do also think there's room for stuff that highlights the issue and makes it a plot point and discusses it too, because I think that is one of the ways you might convince the bigots of the world, basically. You can have those conversations by having well-crafted television dramas that deal with the issues. I think that's important also, but I think specifically for children, I do think that giving them the information that non-binary people exist, you may very well even be one, and that's fine, is wonderful. I think that's just fine and normal and not an issue, and don't even think about it, because that's what the show does.
And the fact that
the show just throws that information away. And the fact that the show did that was wonderful. And also, I think the reason it struck me and filled my heart with warmth was also because I watched it just after the Gavin and Stacey Christmas special, which received a lot of criticism, in my opinion, rightly. There's a scene where, I don't know if you know about this, but there's a scene where the characters sing "Fairy Tale of New York." And Fairy Tale of New York was a song released in the 70s. I'm sure most people know it. You're a skirt, that song. And the bells were ringing out. Love it. It's my favourite Christmas song. But it includes a word which has since become a homophobic slur.
Not the song's fault. That wasn't the original intent of the song. That's not why that word is in the song. However, that is what that word has become, and most radio stations change that word to haggard. Now, Gavin and Stacey, 2 characters, sang that song and used the full original lyric. And the defense of the writers was, oh well, they don't see prejudice, they don't see the song like that, so therefore it was true to the characters to sing the original song. In my opinion, that's not enough of an excuse, because that word is a word that has been yelled at people and used to hurt people, and potentially there are members of your audience that are going to be watching this show that will feel that word will take them out. The minute the song started, I imagine most people, like myself, went, oh shit, they're not gonna, oh, they have, okay. Just, that's not enough. Just change the lyric. Just take it out. Just normalise, without making a point of it, normalise going, you know what? This wasn't the original intent of this piece of media. However, it now has changed because society has changed. Therefore, we're going to still sing the song, still celebrate the song, but tweak one word to make it more appropriate for a modern audience. To exactly what you're saying, this sort of shit shouldn't need to be normalised, but unfortunately, it does. Especially in a world of social media where the people that disagree with stuff are going to yell about it. And you are now in a situation where you're always going to be able to find the opposite view. So just making the right stand is important. And I think that I was so pleased to see Steven Universe do it, especially in a world where something like Gavin and Stacey didn't do it. And in my opinion, they really should have, because there are other words that they categorically wouldn't have used. And I don't think they should have made an exception for that word.
Yeah, no,
Chris rants about that.
100% agree. That Pogue song is a great song, and the intention was, the use of the word there was different, but it's become that. So yeah, you've got to acknowledge. I think what's great as well about this is, like, because again, they throw that information away. They just sort of go like, yep, they, partner, cool. Yeah. And before you even meet Shep, you understand, and that's great. And then when you meet Shep, you can focus not on any of that, because they do that in a scene before you meet Shep. So they've set that up just so you that information is in your brain. And then when you meet Shep, it's just like, let's get to know Shep. And Shep is a really interesting character. I think in different writers' hands would have come across a bit pretentious. Not pretentious. Like Shep stepping in and trying to help Steven understand his feelings when she barely knows him could have, in different writers' hands, come across as like an unlikable character, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you don't know me, please. You just like know when to step out of this. Is how that could have come across, you know. But I think because of the way they wrote Shep, it seems very sincere when Shep sort of says, "Hey, Steven, I think I'm right in saying that your powers are connected to your emotions, right?" Like, so when Shep steps in, it's out of genuine, sincere want to help Steven, and because of the way they write it, which is very well, you don't feel like Shep's just being like a snarky, not snarky, it's the wrong word. I can't even think about that, what I mean by that, but like, I don't know. I just think it could have come across kind of weird and smug, and like somebody who thinks they're better than you.
Yeah, because thinking about it, it's a bit, the other characters have witnessed this enough to probably get that. And like, didn't they do a plot where like Lars and Steven were bubbled or something like that? Or maybe I'm misremembering that and that was Connie. But I just feel like, I mean, Lars is only alive because Steven cried on him. Like, they're intelligent people, but you don't even think of, why is no one else realising this? Because it just feels so in tone with Shep's character. It doesn't feel like, guys, what if da-da-da? It just feels like, oh, it's just they've chosen to characterise Shep further by having them be the one to talk to Steven about this.
And it's really well done because it's like I said, it's done with hesitance. So you know it's not Shep trying to be high and mighty and like, oh, I've got this figured out. These idiots. It's more like Shep just genuinely wanting to help. Because if you look, I've got the dialogue up because I've got the transcript. Hey Stephen, not now Shep. I need to concentrate. No, just hear me out. Look, if I don't figure this out and get rid of this dome, all my friends are gonna die. Lars is like, wouldn't be the first time, which I think was a great line. Shep's like, but your magic's all about your feelings, right? I don't know. See, even adding "I don't know" there is like I'm not sure. I don't know you that well, but it seems like is the next words that you're sad about all your friends drifting away, so you trapped us in this dome just to keep us from leaving. And Steven's like, I don't see the connection, which is a great line,
which is also very funny.
Yeah, the episode is very funny in general, but yeah, I think that like the way they handle it is with just the right amount of hesitance to make Shep a very likable person in a situation where Shep may have not come across that likable, because I feel like that might have felt a bit smug and knowing otherwise. And obviously Shep being written to be just very, very nice and very thoughtful throughout the episode makes Shep a likable character outside of Shep's importance to a wider social discussion about non-binary people. I think that's also important to note, is that what's brilliant about Shep isn't just, I'm not suggesting you were suggesting this, Chris, I just don't want anyone to misunderstand the discussion we're having here. Shep isn't just a brilliant character because of what Shep represents from a discussion perspective. Shep is a well-written, interesting character I would like to get to know more.
Yeah, but what's amazing about the way they wrote it is, even as in wrote the story, whenever I say it, I don't mean the character. I just want to make that very clear.
That literally never occurred to me, but I suppose somebody could have maybe. Yeah,
but people have pulled me up on stuff before where I've made, a lot of the time where I've made genuine mistakes and apologised for, but sometimes where like I've not actually been referring to whoever they think I'm referring to, so right. I just want to make it very clear. And that's
sorry, Jasper's not in this episode, Chris, so you're free and clear. Jasper's not in this episode, so you're free and clear.
Yeah. So
I'm so mean.
They also could have gone down the other route of the character. If they wanted to make Shep an arsehole, they could have done that as well. And it's still that character action would have still felt disconnected from the non-binary of it all, because of the way they handled the non-binary of it all, and that's brilliant.
Yeah, because that would have fallen into the category of like the old, the new boyfriend girlfriend, stereotype being not good for the person in question. I don't think they. In this particular case, that was unlikely, because I think the whole premise of the episode was that Sadie had moved on and was happy. But you're right. From the story perspective of when we first meet Shep, this story could have been going down a very different route, and could have been maybe saying that Sadie had found someone not good for her. But I think as well that the way the show's working right now is it's working towards much more positive ideas and ideals. And I think if I'd have sat and thought about it, that was probably an unlikely way they would have gone. But it is an absolutely possible story beat.
I don't think it ever would have happened, and I don't think it should have done, because I think the mature storyline they did was so much better than that. But what I just wanted to further compliment the way they handled the non-binary stuff, because I feel they could have done that. What do you think of the fact that we don't see on screen the Sadie and Lars conversations? I think it's genius. It makes you feel Steven's, as you were saying earlier, it makes you really connect with Steven's emotions, because you're a bit like, I would have loved to have seen those scenes. But at the same time, it makes all the emotions feel so much more real, because not seeing it makes it feel more powerful and more private to them, which means you kind of get it even more. Loved it.
And it makes just perfect sense. Why would we? Yeah. Just because Steven happens to have been there for a handful of their big moments, the kiss on the island, that episode where Steven was in Lars's body and he tried to make it happen between them. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that one. That kind of terrifying episode of television. I guess like the idea that they've moved on to the point where these things are happening outside of his purview is very upsetting to him, and I think it's genius for a couple of reasons. One, it addresses fans being like, why haven't we seen anything? Like, even us. I'm doing us there, Chris. Why haven't we seen us and Sadie? I want to know what's happening with us and Sadie. That's me and you, like 3 weeks ago. It's like it's so the episode's kind of, it's so clever because it addresses the genuine question of where are they at? What we want to know. We had that conversation, but we had it privately, which makes perfect sense. Of course they did. They're not going to have that conversation in like front of everyone on a stage with microphones. They're just not. So there's an element of it works for the story, and it makes a real interesting point about our expectations with where we should be up to with these characters. And it also helps us really drive home Steven's anguish and situation. And I think that ties in perfectly then to like Sadie, like, looking forward with her music, which I talked about earlier. So it's all really cohesive song. And very well done. The song is absolutely incredible. Probably my favorite of the Future songs so far, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's definitely this and the Pearl episode are definitely my two favorite episodes of Steven Universe Future.
Yeah, mine too. And I think it's interesting because I was looking at this and I was trying to think like which one do I prefer, and I think if I was to put a thing on it now, I would say this one, but it's so close I could see that flip flopping next week. Do you know what I mean? Like they're both very good for different reasons.
I think I'd go the other. I think this one's more character, the other one's more mythology, so it would make sense that you'd be this one, I'd be the other one.
Yeah.
I think that I don't remember there being anything about that. I think I very firmly described it as a perfect episode of television and a perfect episode of Steven Universe. Whereas with this one, the bubble thing felt a little quick at the end. And I'm a massive bigot, so obviously I had all the issues with the non-binary stuff. So obviously joking.
Hashtag Chris with Maya.
Very much not.
That's the worst joke I've ever made, I think.
I can't believe she even took that to tribunal. I mean, wow.
Yeah, that's a different issue altogether. But yeah, come on, you definitely were gonna lose that.
You literally.
Why would you expose yourself that way?
You very deliberately made a choice that would make someone else in your workplace feel uncomfortable and almost in danger. Like, absolutely, they were right to fire her. But anyway. Here we are in the future.
So while we're on that subject, Shep was voiced by India Moore, who is non-binary, and is from the TV show Pose over on FX, which is a Ryan Murphy show that I haven't seen because Ryan Murphy needs to stop making television so much because it's too much and I can't keep up with all of it.
It's got some movies as per the big Netflix thread on Twitter yesterday.
I'm sure. Stop making new content, Ryan Murphy. Focus on the ones you're doing because I can't keep up with all your shows.
So for context, for people that don't know, Netflix basically sent out a bunch of tweets where they revealed all their original movies that are coming next year. And my favourite comment was someone tweeted, only Netflix could announce a David Ayer movie, a Spike Lee movie, and The Kissing Booth 2 in the same thread.
That's fair.
But fair play, just very quick side note on that. Like, for everyone saying, Netflix has potentially killed cinema, no other studio is bringing out that range of content.
True, and it seems Marriage Story is getting a lot of hype at the moment as well. So they've hit it out of the park yet again with a movie about the sound of it. And what's the other one that's coming up that's going to be Netflix? Uncut Gems, the Adam Sandler one. Is that supposed to be
Netflix?
I think so. Didn't they?
I thought that got a cinema release.
It has got a cinema release, but so did Dolomite Is My Name, and
I don't remember seeing like the Netflix logo on the poster or anything.
No, I'm completely wrong. A24.
To be honest with you, I didn't really.
Netflix have it internationally. That's where I've got that from.
Yeah, isn't that the case for A Marriage Story as well? I thought basically A Marriage Story was just distributed internationally on Netflix. I didn't realise they made it in the way that they made The Irishman.
You could be right. No, you could be right. Let me Google it. Oh no, this one is coming up as just. Oh, here you go. Production company Heyday Films. This is really not relevant to this podcast, but I'm going to find out because I want to know. Distributed by Netflix worldwide. No, that one's so the Marriage Story is
not in the way that The Irishman is. No.
Yeah, but also not in the way Uncut Gems is. So Uncut Gems is a film that is A24 and released by A24 and made by A24 in the United States. The Netflix thing is only international. Marriage Story is from a very, very small production company, and Netflix have bought the worldwide rights to distribute.
Right.
So it's the two aren't the same, and neither are they the same as Irishman and Dolomite is my name. So it's like so the
Netflix is a little more in the pocket of Marriage Story than it is Uncut Gems.
Correct, and then even more so than for the other two. Anyway, that's a different issue. Well, I don't even know what we were talking about. How we got onto that? Oh yeah, all the various movies that are coming out this year because of Ryan Murphy. God, that was a hell of a tangent. That tangent was basically an onion. It was like 8 layers deep.
What other notes or trivia have you got, Dan? I've not seen Pose either, but I've heard wonderful things.
Yeah, it's supposed to be very good. I not so much a note, but I just wanted to get your opinions on the Lars situation. Then, so are you happy with Lars going back into space? Is that what we wanted? It is what we wanted, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's better than it makes more. I liked the pastry thing, and I thought when we talked about it the other day, whenever we talked about it on a previous episode of Steven Universe Future, we kind of made it work, like the notion that okay, well maybe he wants to be near Sadie, or maybe he's scared, or da-da-da. Any story solution to keep him on Earth in a pastry shop slightly undoes the character growth that we experienced when he was in space. Slightly undoes the Lars has found his calling, being a space pirate of it all. I think they have this way wrapped up every thread perfectly. Especially and that was just the Sadie of it all. I hadn't even thought of the notion of the homeschool takes a good couple of years, so the pastry shop was done. I almost wish you'd had him say, oh, I can't remember the name of the gem, but so-and-so is going to run the pastry shop and all the money's going to go to my mum and dad. Like, how lovely is that notion? Like, he's not only set up the pastry shop because it's something to do, he's trained a gem on how to deliver the pastries, and he doesn't need the money. He's off doing space adventures, but it's all going to mum and dad, baby. Like, that's brilliant. Yeah. I kind of wish they'd chucked that in now, but maybe that is the case. We can make that fan canon. Like, that's fansplaining something. That's cool.
Yeah, and I think it's also. I think you hinted at that. Blue Lace Agate taking over is really cool because it's like that's not somebody doing work experience anymore. That is a gem on Earth with their own business.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I thought it was done wonderfully, the whole thing, and I think it makes a lot of sense for the character. And I think it's the right place. If you'd have, especially, and like I know Ship has come at me, but I just it wouldn't have felt right if every potential couple turned out to be a couple. So you know what? If they go with Stephen and Connie, and Sadie and Lars are the ones that they're like, well, those two grew apart. They're not really a couple anymore. Cool, fine.
We talked about that though, didn't we? We literally. I remember us having that conversation when when they were both going their different ways, and Sadie was doing the music, and we were like, actually, at this point, the show could very easily say they've grown apart. And that would be fitting and right. I'm sure we said that on an early episode. Maybe even it was the Lars at the Stars episode, or in fact, it probably was. That like the whole idea now may very well have been that they've grown away from each other, grown apart.
And maybe what they're going to do with Connie and Stephen is, it doesn't matter that the rest of the world doesn't need you anymore. We're always going to need each other, and that's enough. Like,
do you think that's where it's going?
The reason, I don't know. I wouldn't mind it going that way. I'm not predicting anything, but you could go, because they have very deliberately taken Connie completely out of the picture here. Maybe that's because Connie's going to be part of the solution and resolution of it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, but going back to the Lars of it all, I thought every element of the Lars story was handled brilliantly.
Yes, agreed. I also I liked a lot of the little references to the old stories. So I can't remember the last time we were all together at a pastry establishment. It was a good line. I also enjoy, a lot of people say you don't really know someone until you've been stranded on an island with them.
I really enjoyed that one.
I thought that was kind of genius. How did you feel about then the different sort of little endings we've got for our buddies, the rest of the suspects? Jenny's doing jackets for phones. Buck's going to medical school, and sour cream
The best bit of that is when she was like, "So that means Buck's going to be saving lives in a good 20 years."
Yes, very good joke. Yeah, for sure. And then of course sour cream is DJing regularly in Empire City,
but also stroking one of the off-colors whose name I can't remember.
Was he? Oh, was he? Did I miss something?
Yeah, he sat on top of the big gem in the big fusion. I can't remember her name.
Let me have a look. I've got to. I missed that. If that's
he sat on top of her, like stroking her head. It's amazing.
I'm just trying to find the image now. Oh my god, he is. That's.
I mean, he's 2 steps away from fusion.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice. I don't know why I dismissed that. I mean, that's fluorite. What's
fluorite? That's I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, he looks like he's about to fuse with fluorite. Like, it's amazing.
That is amazing. I don't know.
Yeah, I loved him. Especially the Buck joke really made me laugh. I thought all of the what they're up to felt completely realistic. Even the jackets for phones felt completely in character. And I thought it was a great way to. None of those characters needed a whole big thing explaining it. So to get it in that montage form for them, I thought worked really well.
Yeah, and I like that they very specifically had Lars say, "I like being in space."
Well, also he said we can spread the message to other planets. We can bring what we've learned to other planets. I think is the line, and that's just a lovely notion as well.
Yeah. In terms of Stephen, like the line that really defines this episode for me, and I wrote this one down. I'm just looking through my notes. I've always been trying to help my friends. I don't know who I am without them. And that's going to come back up in the next episode. So we'll come back to that notion. I also really enjoyed, just as a little moment that I wanted to reference, Steven's awkward intro on stage. Who here loves Sadie Killer and the Suspects? Yeah. Because this band has one of them. It's just...
I really enjoyed Lars's. Oh, jeez.
Yeah. It's just great. And we haven't really talked about the very ending. And I just think this is one of the most powerful parts of the episode, which is that Stephen, after the bubble goes away, asks, talks to Shep and Sadie, and is like, "I like your new sound," and they're like, they're like, "Would you like a CD?" And he's like, "You haven't got a cassette, have you?" And they're like, "We got you," and they give him a cassette, and then he drives out into the woods essentially, with the song playing, and then sits on his car and looks up at the stars, like pondering his situation. And I guess that's, and I think during that there's like a montage of like other people moving forward. Like, is that right? Or looking forward? I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I think so.
So what do we see? I've got it up in front of me. Oh no, it just literally ends with, it's while he's driving that happens. Is that right? No, I've got it up here. Oh, it's just, you just see little homeschool welcoming new students with a sign, and then Stephen looking a bit sad before he gets in the car and drives away. So there's not a montage, it's just one other shot. But yeah, he heads out into just the middle of the forest essentially, and just like stares up at the stars. It's really sad. It's a really bittersweet ending, isn't it? Because he looks really hurt and confused and upset, and yeah. I guess we'll talk about this next week. But him quitting running little homeschool is a really interesting choice.
Yes, definitely. We will discuss that next week.
So there you go. We should end this episode on what the last thing that Lars said, which is, I guess it's kind of cute. You don't want me to leave.
I don't, Dan. Ever.
Exactly. We're not leaving.
We're stuck. We're stuck doing this.
Yeah, so I said the other day, like, what do you do next when Steven Universe is over? I'm like, you think Steven Universe is ever going to be over at this point? Like, what we do?
I just made I knocked my mic. The podcast in general. The other day, someone was like, "Oh, what are you watching?" I was like, "Oh, I've got to go and watch The Witcher." And it's just show a review for Nothing But Static. And they were like, "Oh, that doesn't seem like your kind of show." I'm like, "It isn't." Like, but I've got to do it for the podcast. And they're like, "Well, why do you have to review something you don't want to review?" I'm like, podcast. And then they were like, "Why don't you just not do the podcast?" And I was like, "Because we do the podcast."
Oh, that's not no. I enjoy reviewing stuff. Really. Even the not good stuff is fun to review.
I said that. I was like, I wouldn't not do it. I have too much fun doing it.
Yeah, and it is fun sometimes to review a show that's not good. And I'm not saying.
I'm resentful. I'm resentful of The Witcher because it's because we don't review crap reality TV or stuff like that. but to be fair, we wouldn't be reviewing The Witcher if it wasn't such a big hit. Well, according to Netflix, the biggest show of last year, which is crazy.
Yeah. So. I can kind of imagine that, though. It did seem to get a lot of buzz.
Yeah, but considering it came out at the very end of the year.
Yeah, but they're always top heavy with their shows, aren't they? Because they do a big dump the whole season weekend release. So it's a bit like a film, isn't it? Where most people end up seeing it the first week or two, or at least some of it. So you can usually get a sense of how a film is going to perform overall by its first weekend. So yeah, but there you go. That's everything. Everyone go home. That's how we end the show now. Just
we'll see you next time.
Yeah, everyone just go away. Thank you. Goodbye. No, thanks very much for listening. We'll see you next episode as we talk about. I'm not going to name it because I'm good. Oh, I think you've gotten me doing this. The last couple episodes, I think you've sort of shot me in the foot by naming the episode before I name it at the end, and I've just nearly done that to myself.
Yeah, I mean, I literally didn't do anything then, though.
I know, you're incepting me. That's what you're doing. You're making me feel like that's the flow of it, but it's not. So we'll do it properly, Chris. I've been Dan Doolin.
Right. I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll speak to you next time as we review Prickly Pear.